Welcome to Mr. Williams' Guided Reading Lesson Plan, 6th Grade English Language Arts, August 8th, 2018. Today we will be exploring the book Just a Dream by Chris Van Allsburg. In this book, we are going to be discussing what theme is. As we move on and continue to slide 3, I will first like to talk about what guided reading is. Guided reading is a practice in the classroom where students are placed into small groups and read books at their instructional level when meeting with a teacher. This is important that it is at their instructional level. And as we remember that it's at their instructional level, we also have to look at what guided reading is not. Guided reading is not popcorn reading. Popcorn reading is when you call on one kid and then randomly call on another student in the classroom. Okay, it is also not independent reading at a frustrational level. This is not where the student is going to the library in your classroom or grabbing a book, and if they're in 3rd grade and only reading at an A level, picking up a book that's at a Z level. We do not need that. That will only frustrate the student. And finally, this is an important one because it happens sometimes in schools. This is not students reading to each other out in the hallway. This is a time to focus. Moving along to slide 4, I would like to discuss some standards and objectives that will be met in this guided reading lesson for the book Just a Dream by Chris Van Allsburg. 6.2, we will determine a theme or the central idea of a text and how it is conveyed through particular details, and provide a summary of the text distinct from personal opinions or judgment. 6.5, we will analyze how a particular sentence, chapter, scene, or stanza fits into an overall structure of a text and contributes to the development of theme in setting or plot. These two are the main standards that I would like to look at as we continue to move through this text. My main objective is the teacher will read the mentored text, and students will determine theme by citing textual evidence and making connections. In addition, students will expand on their central idea and how the theme relates to the real world. So for this guided reading lesson, it's important to understand that I would have already taught a mini lesson on how to find theme in a book or in a story that you're reading. Remember, the guided reading lesson comes after that mini lesson because I'm searching to see their independent practice a little bit more, if you will. So this is a mini lesson within a bigger lesson, if you will. All right, so the first step is pre-reading, all right? So before even reading the book, the students would have already seen that I've modeled how to pre-read a book by activating the student's schema. In order to activate their schema, I will display pictures and images on the board so the students can have time to think about it. These images include pictures of pollution, what the world may look like if it was, already destroyed. And then we'll ask students to engage and open up and share maybe personal stories. Maybe they've seen a factory with smoke, or maybe they've seen a place that is highly polluted. Part B of pre-reading is previewing the text and making predictions. This is usually a picture walk in the book. The students may take observations or notes that as we pre-walk through the book, but there may be some images that seem familiar that when we were activating their schema. The students can use sticky notes to maybe mark down ideas. They could also have their reading journal readily available for them within this guided reading group, so maybe they can take notes while they're previewing their text and predictions to kind of go back and see were they right, did it make sense to them. Also in the pre-reading stage, we want to look at vocabulary and terminology. The vocab introduced in this text, we will focus on 3 main ideas: recycling, visionary, and upstander. Students will be able to find these words within our word wall, and that's where they'll be placed. But I will give students time in that small group to think, pair, and share about this vocabulary and maybe their personal experiences with these words. As students begin to silently read at the back table, I will be there as well. They will read to themselves, but I will remind them that good readers are looking for this message or theme to the story. How do you find this message or theme? We are looking for patterns that keep reoccurring within the story. And what can you predict based off these patterns will help the students realize the theme in which they're looking for. Moving along to slide 6, we begin stage 2, the actual reading. As students begin to read the text, they will read silence themselves. We have a method where we do a tap in. So if I tap my fingers twice next to the student, that means I want them to begin to read to me. They should be looking for this purpose and their pattern. They may use their reading journals to stop and jot notes. Stop and jot is when they just take down notes of what's happening within the story that is important to helping them find the theme or the message of the story. They can also use this idea of etch and sketch notes, which is where they may draw out the most important events that they are reading. I have left an example so that you can see. This has nothing to do with the book that we're reading, but this is just an example of what sketch notes may look like. Responding now to the actual text, we need to revisit the purpose and question the students, and they should start to see a pattern within the book. They should be able to observe that every time Walter, the main character in our story, drifts off to sleep, he's discovered himself in a more polluted population indoor setting. They should be able to recall these stories about, they should be able to recall certain events within the story, how he visited maybe the town dump, or maybe he got a chance to see the factories that were being built over as he drifted off in his bed, began to float away again. The next part is clarifying the concepts in the vocabulary. So now that the students are kind of seeing this pattern and maybe taking notes of it and understanding a little bit better, as they continue to read independently or in some cases with me, they should be able to share what recycling is now within the story, what an upstandard is, the visionary or the vision that Walter starts to see or starts to create within his own self. Which can lead to supporting their comprehension. What happened first in the story, what happened next, what happened last, so on and so forth. They should be able to make these predictions now based off a reoccurring pattern that they are seeing. Students may start to think about additional sources. This is good if students are making connections. Maybe they're thinking about global warming. Maybe they're thinking about something that came across in social studies about global warming and effects on the current events in which we talk about or which we see in our world today. Additional purposes, part each of this, the students will complete the story on their own finally, and they will be reminded the pattern that Walter's experienced in dreaming and finding himself in. Hopefully this encourages students to continue to make predictions as they finish to wrap up the book. Which leads us to the last two most important things, and this is exploring and applying in stages 4 and 5. Now it's time for the students to explore. This can be with their notes, this can be with their reading and maybe going back to reread the story. But they should be able to make a timeline of the events that have taken place. And this timeline is going to be important because they want to be able to take these 4 or 5 events. This is going to be their textual evidence. And this is something that we want to build upon the students anyway. We're always looking for evidence. Because theme is such a grandiose concept, it's ambiguous. It's going to be important that students understand that they need textual evidence to support their answers. So this timeline will help them start to form. And then after they have formed their timeline, they can start to think about these essential questions from the beginning of the text that we spoke about. What is Chris von Allsburg trying to say about the environment, and what part of the story made you think that? Because they already have this timeline in front of them, it's going to be easier to recall this timeline and have it stick with them. Finally, my favorite part, at the end of all this, at the end of reading this, at grasping these ideas, it's applying what they've learned. One of my favorite activities and favorite apps to use is something called Flipgrid. It's a chance where students can actually video record themselves and give a response and then share and send these responses off. I would want students to create a post video, a 2-minute video about their thoughts about climate change. But before posting this video, students must use additional resources and learn about the effects of climate change due to population, using other resources that we have within the classroom and online as A to Z science books as a reference. So they're taking the references from A to Z books. They don't have to do anything on their own. They're not Googling anything, but they find the reference and, more importantly, the text evidence from another text and bring them together. This is kind of this idea of getting the students to use text-to-text connections to further back up their point and or claim what you're trying to make. Then they can post their findings to this Flipgrid video, and they will pretend like they're talking to a local rep about the importance of keeping our environment clean. And this will prove that maybe, and hopefully the students get from this, that the overall theme of this story, or the message, or the moral, or the author's main concept was environmental. Maybe it was pollution hurts. Maybe it was the effects we have on people. Maybe it was being an upstander. But all these different themes or ideas, so even though theme is usually one word, it can be one or, a little bit more than 2 or 3 words. And it's still the same concept, but we're reaching the same concept by applying what we've learned and using the text evidence and using the patterns within the story to make these connections. So why is guided reading important in the classroom? It's a essential component for reading development of the students. The first reason is that this idea meets the students right where they are at their reading level. You want to build upon the students' understanding and fluency and vocabulary. The only way to do this is to demonstrate this by modeling, and then having the students practice this process on their own while applying the applications in which they need to be successful. Guided reading is a must in the classroom, and it will continue to grow the development and the success of readers in the classroom. And who knows, it can ultimately lead to the love of reading. Thank you for your time. I hope you've enjoyed this guided reading lesson, and I really do hope you get a chance to pick up this book called Just a Dream. It's a wonderful book with a wonderful theme and message, and I believe that 6th graders can truly grasp the comprehension and the understanding of this book and truly apply it in their own lives. Thank you.